So the topic for today is about the database backup cloud service and the new OCI native database cloud backup module. It just takes a few minutes. I want to go over what's changing and what the options are for moving from the legacy OCI Classic object storage and declarative module to the new one. And then, yeah, we'll open it up for questions on any question you may have, not necessarily specific to this topic, but backup and recovery related. Okay. So first of all, the Oracle Database Backup Cloud Service. I assume you are familiar with it, but it's basically a platform service that allows you to run RMAN backups and send backups directly, either for on-premises or from cloud instances directly to cloud storage. It's based on the database cloud backup module, which is an SBT module that you download from OTN and install it on your database. And that module let you send backups, so allocate channels in RMAN that will send backups directly to the Oracle Cloud Storage. Obviously, it provides all the advantages of using cloud storage for backups, the ability to have an off-site location where you can easily send your backup with no scalability problems, as scalability is virtually unlimited. Security is provided, and the connection is HTTPS, uses encryption to transfer data over. The data is also encrypted because encryption is mandatory, so you must turn on RMAN encryption. You can also use compression if you want. Both these features it usually requires a license on your database. Either the advanced security option or the advanced compression options must be licensed based on what you want to use. In this case, you don't have to purchase those licenses. If you don't have them, you can just use them as part of the database backup cloud service, so it's included in the subscription. Right? So what I want to focus today is the database cloud backup module and what changes. The cloud storage we're using, this module has been around for a few years now as part of this service. It was originally based on the object storage that is being now named Object Storage Classic for the Oracle Cloud, which is the generation 1, if you want, of the Oracle Cloud. Now there is generation 2, what's normally called OCI, or Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, without the classic word. And that uses a different APIs. It's a completely different infrastructure. It has different features. And again, it has different APIs. So the original module we had, the legacy one, was based on Swift APIs. The new OCI infrastructure as the option of accessing object storage using also Swift APIs. So there is the option that probably some of viewers and customers are still using, that was install the legacy database cloud backup module, the legacy one for the OCI Classic infrastructure using the Swift-based APIs, and point it to the Swift-compatible endpoint that was made available in the new Gen 2 OCI infrastructure. Okay? That was everyone that wanted to use the backup and to send backup to OCI had to do until recently, when we released the new OCI native module, and that's what I want to talk about now. So all this, the initial part was really to try to set the stage and clarify this differentiation between the classic Gen 1 cloud and the new OCI cloud. So how to obtain this new module? It's in the same way. So there is one download location, which is OTN. For the Oracle Database Cloud Backup module, there is only one option. You go to OTN and do your search, and you'll find the Oracle Database backup module, and it's in the same location. You download the same zip file, no changes, but now in the zip file there are two folders. Okay? One OPC installer, which is the legacy one you've been used to see, and also the OCI installer. This is the new module that is recommended to use to do backups to OCI. Whether you're new to OCI, use this one. If you were using the legacy module to back up to OCI using the Swift compatible endpoints, switch to the new one, and I will talk about this in a minute. Documentation has been updated. So again, usual location, documentation for the Oracle Database Backup Cloud Service, and you follow the link, download and install the backup module, and you will see the documentation. Now you'll find the details on how to install the new module. There are two basically chapters now. Okay? Installing the Oracle Database Cloud Backup module for OCI Classic. This was the legacy one that we used to see before. Now there is the new chapter installing the Oracle Database Cloud Backup module for OCI, and it gives you all the instructions on how to install this new module. Why it's recommended to use this one? Well, first of all, again, because it uses the native OCI API calls instead of Swift compatible APIs, and it provides improved security. Okay, so part of these changes is now that this new module will use a key pair based authentication instead of the user password one that was used in OCI Classic and also in OCI through the Swift compatible API. So you have a stronger authentication. Buckets can now be created in any compartment, so the new module will support the ability to specify a compartment where you want your bucket to be created. That was not the case even in OCI with the Swift compatible APIs, and compartments did not exist in OCI Classic, so this is totally new. And also new features that will be added soon. First one will be the support for lifecycle policy in order to manage automatic archiving of your backups from standard object storage to archive storage. This will only be supported using the new module. The legacy one will just do what it does now, and that's it. It can still be used, and actually must be used for OCI Classic customers that are still using OCI Classic storage, but all the new ones will go to OCI, and also those using OCI Classic, we really recommend to go to OCI. I'll check the questions at the end, so yeah, keep writing them in the chat if you have questions, and we will go through them at the end. So what do you need to do to install this module? So first of all, there are some preparation steps that you have to take if you're coming from the legacy one. So first of all, you have to prepare your API signing key pair. Okay, so your private key and public keys if you don't have them already. You follow the instructions at this location and this documentation, and it will exactly show you the commands that you have to use to create your key pair. Okay? When you create your private key file, do not use passphrase encryption. That's an option that is listed in this documentation. Don't use that. We don't support it. Okay? So you must not do this. And so you create your private key, stored in a file without password encryption, and then you will have your public key generated by the same command. Just you have to upload that public key to the user management page in the OCI console for the user that you want to use, and take a note of the fingerprint for that key that is displayed in the user console when you upload it. Okay? And that's the first thing, or first two things that you have to do. Once you have your private and public key ready on the OCI console, go and take a note of a couple more things, three things. One is the tenancy OCID, the other one is the compartment OCID, and the third one is the user OCID. Okay, all those OCIDs are displayed in the console. Just follow the instructions into the documentation on where to find them, make a note of them, and when you have these things prepared, you are ready to run the installer for the new module. The installer, which is again part of that zip file, inside that zip file that I showed you, downloaded from OTN, has some new parameters. Okay, so first of all, the host one, that's always been there. Here you have to specify the endpoint for the native object storage APIs. It's always in this form: objectstorage.region.oraclecloud.com. That's it. You don't have to add v1, tenancy, whatever. That's all you have to use. Then you specify the private key file. That's the first new parameter you have to use. And that's the private key that you generated as per the instruction. Then you specify the public key fingerprint that you obtain from the OCI console once you upload your public key to the user you want to use. And then you specify the other three things that I mentioned you have to copy from your console: the tenancy OCID, the compartment OCID if you want to use. If you don't specify this is optional. If you don't use it, the bucket will be created in the root compartment. And then the user OCID. Okay? Do not specify tenancy name, user names, or compartment names here. Here you have to specify this OCID, which is kind of similar to these things that you see listed here, right? And again, it's available through your OCI console. And then you specify the usual parameters for the wallet location, the library location, and the configuration file name. Last is the bucket name. This was dash container in the previous version. Now for OCI, keep the OCI naming, which is bucket. So dash bucket and the bucket name. If this bucket does not exist, it will be created in this compartment and this tenancy. It's quite straightforward if you're familiar with the legacy module and with the OCI object storage. What to do for existing customers that are already using the legacy module through the Swift compatible APIs to back up to OCI. So if you're already backing up to OCI, all you have to do is collect the information, prepare the key pair as mentioned, and then run the OCI installer. There is nothing else to do. Obviously, make sure that you use the new endpoint, not new, but the native API endpoint. Okay, so if we're, for example, backing up to the Phoenix region using the Swift compatible APIs, your endpoint was something like this, like Swift object storage.usphoenix.oraclecloud.com. Now, to go to the same location through the native APIs, your endpoint becomes object storage.us. So basically, you drop the Swift part on the endpoint. Okay. There is really nothing else to do. Once you've done that and you set up the module to point to the same bucket you were using before, all your Armen backups are still there and still available. Don't worry if you do an Armen list backup like I did in this case. For this example, you see there is this media field that tells you where your backup is, where your bucket is. This media field will show the endpoint that was used in the format, including the bucket name, that was used when the backup was taken. But this is just a field, so don't worry about this. Even if this type of media label is shown, it's just a label. So your backup, even if it shows this thing, can be restored directly. Easiest thing to try this is install the OCI native model pointing to the same backup, and then do a restore validate, for example. Right? You can do a restore validate, you simulate a restore, and so you can test that your backups are still available and still accessible and can be restored through the OCI native APIs, even if the backup was originally taken using the legacy module. Okay. This is only if your backups are already in OCI. There is another option, which is you were using the legacy module to backup to the OCI Classic infrastructure, to OCI Classic storage. In this case, there are two options here that you can consider. So the first one that I would recommend is if the backups are short-term retention backup. If your recovery window is something like a couple of weeks, 3 weeks, okay, even a month maybe, okay, you may consider just leave those backup where they are, especially if your database is quite big. So you have a lot of data stored there, just leave them where they are and install the new module pointing to a new OCI bucket and start backing up to that one. Okay. When install the new module, you can specify a different wallet location and you can specify a different configuration file name, right? Like, I don't know, if you were using the default, OPC sid.ora name, okay, you can now use OPC sid OCI.ora name, right? So just use a different configuration name for the new module and start backing up to this new bucket, okay? And at this point, all the new backups will go to the OCI bucket and the existing backup remain in OCI Classic storage. At any time, if you needed to restore from the old bucket, from the Classic container, that was the name that was used for buckets, you can just use the old configuration file name when you allocate your Arman channels. Okay? At that point, the configuration file will point to the other wallet where the credentials are stored, will point to the old endpoint in OCI Classic, and will basically let you access your old backups in the OCI Classic location where they were originally sent to. In this way, you don't have to worry about moving things, migrating data, copying data from one cloud infrastructure to another. You just leave them when they are. When they expire, you can just delete them, and that's done. Okay, and you allocate channels using the old configuration file names, and you can do cross-check, you can delete backups, or whatever. Different point is if you have backups that has a long retention, if you have backups done with a maybe 1 year, 5 years, 7 year retention in the Classic infrastructure, at that point, the recommendation is copy them over and move them to OCI. You can use a tool like ArcLoan. There is a white paper at this location that is listed here on how to use it. I'm also about to release, this is a generic ArcLoan white paper on how to transfer data to object storage from different locations, etc. Right? I'm about to release a white paper, specifically an updated version of the current technical white paper for the database backup cloud service that will be OCI focused. We'll have all the information on installing the new module, and also we'll have some more details on using ArcLoan to move your backups from one location to another. Anyway, if you follow this also white paper, you will be able to do it. Once your backups are moved to the OCI, new OCI bucket, you just install the module and you're ready to go. There is nothing else to do. Arman will find the backups in the new location. You can restore from them directly. Really nothing else has to be, no other action is necessary. Okay. Now, let me see. I saw there were some chat messages here, so I'm going to see if there's anything, any question that I can address. Oh, okay. I see Kelly was on and already replied to some of them. If you have other questions, feel free to unmute yourself and ask them live. Again, do not have to be necessarily related to what I just told you. Okay, if you have other questions related to the recovery appliance, Oracle Secure Backup, or RBAN in general, whatever, just feel free to ask them and we'll try to address them. Okay, I see. Yeah, okay.
Hey, quick question for you. So I've used RMAN historically for backup and recovery operations, but I've never used the the backup copy function.
Mm-hmm.
And then reading the 12C stuff, and I ran across this incremental forever backup strategy.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I've never used backup copies before. Are there any limitations at all for any recovery operations, or like instantiating standbys or any duplicate database type functionality? Or is it the same as when I'm using like backup pieces and backup sets and things like that?
No, well, there are differences. I don't think specifically to transition. I mean, when you do a restore, you can always, do a restore. Doesn't matter where your backup was taken, if it was using image copies or backup sets. If you want to use the backup module, you cannot use image copies. Okay, so if you want to send your backup to cloud object storage, you can only do that using backup sets. Object storage, object storage is a kind of sequential access or object-based, if you want, as the name says, storage. So it's not like a file system. That's what you need. If you want to do an image copy, you need to do it to either an NFS mounted file system or a local file system. Anyway, it needs to be randomly accessible disk space. But that's the only difference. Yeah.
Yeah, Marco, this is Kelly. The other thing that you have to be aware of between backup sets and copies, or the image copies, is there's some differences in how parallelism works. So you need to pay attention to that if you have very large databases.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's a big point. Yeah, that said, yes, you can do this incremental forever strategy. The thing to consider also is that it's incremental forever, but there is some additional activities going on after you complete your incremental, which is basically rolling forward your image copy, right? So
right.
The changes are applied. That's additional work that your database server must be done. So it's through its incremental forever. The backup is incremental, but after the backup is finished, your database server will still be engaged doing some RMAN work to update the image copy. As opposed to, for example, the incremental forever strategy that you can apply when using a recovery appliance. Okay, if you use a recovery appliance, your database server is just really doing incremental forever. I mean, you do an incremental backup every day and you're done. The process of creating the virtual full backup that gives you the ability to do a full restore, even if your last backup was just an incremental, that's all done inside the recovery appliance. So after the incremental is finished, the RMAN work on the database server is finished also. If you do incremental forever strategy based on image copies, after your incremental is finished, there is an additional step, which is rolling forward your image copy. So that's the other thing to consider.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Let me see other questions. Kelly, did you address all of them in the chat? Or
Tim wants you to comment on pricing changes between OCIC and OCI.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So I saw there is also a question about the module being free. Yes, the module is free. But it's not really free. It's part, if you want, of the database backup cloud service that you need to subscribe to. Okay. There are no pricing changes in terms of cost changes, but there are changes in terms of model, if you want. Right. So in OCI Classic, the legacy world, you had two options. One was a non-metered option, which is a cost based on a per terabyte, and it was all inclusive. You pay in advance every month by for a certain capacity. That's what you can use, and that's it. Whether you use it or not use it, or you use it 10% of it, it doesn't matter. Okay? If you wanted to use the non-metered model, you could subscribe for, I don't know, 10 terabytes, and you're going to start paying every month for 10 terabytes, no matter what you use. There is now the new model, which is based on universal credits. In this case, it's a metered service. Okay, you subscribe to a certain number of credits for Oracle Cloud Services. You can use any cloud service, and you are charged, so you are consuming credits based on what you are using on any cloud service. So in this case, you would be charged for the amount of storage you're using for the database backup, and the price is not all inclusive anymore. Okay, so in the past, the price was one price, storage and database backup service. Now it's split into different costs and two different SKUs. One SKU is the database cloud service SKU. It's just a certain amount. It's around flex price is around $6 per terabyte per month. And on top of that, you also pay for the object storage based on the infrastructure object storage cost that you are using. Okay? If you are using 10 terabytes of object storage, but only 1 terabyte is actually ARM and data, and the other 9 is other things that you store there, you will pay for obviously the 10 terabytes of object storage you're using for the infrastructure service, and only 1 terabyte will be charged for the database backup cloud service. That's only the ARM and data. And in this case, you only pay for what you are consuming. Okay, so you don't have to set a certain amount of set a capacity in advance. It's just you pay for what you use. In the end, the main difference is this between the non-meter all-inclusive price we had before, and the fact that now you are charged two different prices, one for database backup and one for object storage, but the total you pay is not different. Okay, so it's just separated into different components, but you're not paying the database backup service on top of what you were paying before. So yeah, this is basically what the changes are.
There's one question in the chat, Marco, about the cloud service availability on the OCI console.
Yeah, so no, it's available. The database backup service is available in OCI, and what I mean by that is that you can use it backing up, as I mentioned, directly to OCI. You don't need to use OCI Classic Object Storage at all. There was a requirement in the past when placing an order not to have Object Storage Classic necessarily going together with the database backup cloud service. It's not there anymore. You can use OCI. You need to have OCI in your quote if you want. Now it's a little different because with universal credit, what you are actually ordering is credits. But the point is, you can use OCI. That's it. You can forget about OCI Classic if you don't want to use it. But to monitor the utilization, and I think this was the question, for now, you still have to go under My Services, and that's where your database backup service will be listed, and that's where you can go and check how much you are consuming in terms of object storage, in terms of ARM and capacity utilized in your object storage. But your object storage can be OCI. The other point is this right now will not show any utilization, and it will not be charged for now. I think we will enable this in June, July timeframe, hopefully. So for now, you can start using it, but you will only be charged for object storage. You will start seeing the database backup cloud service consumption reported in the console, again on the OCI classic My Services side, and the corresponding charges for it starting in probably July.